Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Sika, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the San Francisco Film Critics Circle. For more information, you can go to our website at sffcc.org. And if you'll just indulge me here for just a minute, our guest tonight is known for playing Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series, Colonel William Tavington in The Patriot, and criminal Michael Caffey in the Showtime series Brotherhood. He was Hap Percy in the Netflix supernatural series The OA. He currently plays Captain Gabriel Lorca, the commanding officer of the USS Discovery in Star Trek Discovery. His stage roles include Louis Ironson in the Royal National Theatre London premieres of Parts 1 and 2 of Tony Kushner's Angels in America, and has been one of the two hitmen playing opposite Lee Evans as Gus in Harry Burton's 50th anniversary revival of Harold Pinter's 1957 two-hander play The Dumbwaiter. His film credits include Event Horizon, Armageddon, The End of the Affair, Fury, A Cure for Wellness. That was a movie to write home about. And Green Zone, among others. In an article called The Naked and the Dead, which was published in the San Francisco Chronicle on November 26, 2006, staff writer Neva Chonin names the character Lucius Malfoy one of the 12 sexiest men who were never alive, and our guest one of the 13 sexiest men who are real and alive. In the film you just watched, The Death of Stalin, he played Field Marshal Georgy Zhukov, and we're going to talk to him about that and other things if there's time, but before we do, please extend a warm San Francisco welcome to actor extraordinaire, Mr. Jason Isaacs.
Hi. Oh, hi. Thanks for staying. If you've got parking or babysitters, or don't be embarrassed to get up and leave, or if you're starving, that's fine too.
You said that when you were sent the script for The Death of Stalin, you said your first thought was that
Armando
this is a
sick,
mistake, I'm not
twisted
known
person.
for comedy.
No, my first thought was Armando is a sick and twisted person who needs help.
Oh, okay.
and this film was going to crash and burn and he'd never work again. And then I thought, this is fucking hilarious. I can't believe anyone's giving him the money to make it. And then I thought, it must be a mistake it got sent to me, and that it must be a predictive text, and that it was sent to Jason Statham or someone, or Jason Bateman. Yeah. And so I said yes instantly. And then I phoned him, because it came with a note saying the cast list, and it said, if you have any questions, call me. And I called him and I said, we're not doing Russian accents, are we? He said, oh, fuck no. And I said, so can I do it Yorkshire? And he said, I don't see why not. Tambor's doing it Californian, Steve Buscemi's Brooklyn, Paul Weiss Cockney, more added to the mix. And I'm glad he did, because when I read it, I heard it in that voice, and I just couldn't, if it said no, I'm not sure what I would have done.
You also said you knew it could be an extraordinary misfire in terms of taste.
Well, he was, he's the greatest mass murderer of the last 100 years, and there's millions of people descended from people who were slaughtered or tortured or whatever. I thought it steered a fine line, but it needed a great director to make it offensive only to the people who should be offended, and sensitive to the people who suffered. So it turns out he did it. In my opinion, he's done it. In the Russians' opinion, which is great. Which
it's banned there, isn't it? Now, still.
Here's the thing that happened. So it wasn't banned. It was given a license, and he went there and he did all the press, and it got standing ovations from the journalists at the screenings. And then the day before it was due to open, Zhukov, the character I play's daughter, wrote to the Kremlin and said, she hadn't seen the film, of course, and she said it's grossly offensive. And some lowly apparatchik in the culture ministry panicked, much like the people around Stalin, panicked probably in terror of what would happen if Putin saw it, and revoked the license. Well, one of the cool art cinemas like this, presumed it was a joke. And so they went ahead and showed it anyway, and there was a police raid in Russia, and they shut the thing down. And of course, it went on to make us the most successful and popular illegally streamed film in Russia. And sure. It was fantastic publicity. And there's a brilliant tweet of a guy in Red Square underneath Putin's window watching it on his laptop. I don't know where he is now. But
check that tweet. Well, did you know anything specifically about Georgy Zhukov before you signed on for the role? Or?
I didn't. It's an area that's not taught in British schools in Russian history, and so it was a huge abyss in my knowledge. And if they were here, everybody did mountains of research. Andrea Riseborough read this huge doorstep of a book about oh, blimey, what's her name? Stalin's daughter. Just been talking. Svetlana, thank you very much. There's a book called, appropriately, Stalin's Daughter, and she watched interviews and documentaries about her. I glanced at the Wikipedia page, and it said he could say whatever he wanted to anybody.
Right, apparently he was the only person brave enough to criticize him to his face.
But mostly it was this photograph that told me everything I need to know. There was a picture of this peacock of a man with a big bull chest wearing about 12,000 medals. And I thought, what kind of dickhead wants to wear that many medals? And it was apparent that he thought he'd won the Second World War single-handed. So we went for costume. When I went for the costume fitting, I said, could we stuff my chest and give me a kind of bull, a big barrel chest? And they stuffed. I said, can I have a bit more? And I kept on grabbing, stuffing, putting more and more and more until I looked like Pamela Anderson. And then my arms looked like noodles. So I said, can we stuff the arms as well? And they all looked very confused. But in the end, I went to set and I strapped on this huge upper body that made me feel like somebody entirely different. And that's all the research I did, I'm afraid.
This is a very funny film, and when we spoke to Armando Iannucci, the director, he basically said that he had everybody play the scenes straight, and that the humor would emerge from the truth of the situation. But in watching the film, I just watching it recently, I wondered, how do you say a line straight? Did Coco Chanel take a shit on your head straight?
Well,
but so anyway, my question is, how did you approach the written text? As comedy, as seriousness, or as something else?
Well, the thing is that as you mentioned very kindly, ran through the highlights of my credits. I could bore you for an hour of all the things you've never heard of. But when I did The Dumb Waiter, Pinter called it the comedy of terror. And this is the comedy of terror. All the characters, apart from me, are completely shitting themselves at every stage. Once Stalin dies, and when he's alive, they're terrified. And when he's dead, they know if they don't manage this thing very carefully, they're also going to be dead.
Yeah.
So all the comedy comes from the anxiety and terror that they're feeling. And the gallows humor that happens around death and destruction. I mean, Zhukov is enormously confident, and he knows that he holds all the key cards. He holds the trump card. That word, you can't even say that word anymore in normal conversation. But anyway, he holds all the chips. And so, did Coco Chanel take a shit on your head? Is not only a brilliant line, but he's sarcastic because he holds all the power. Actually, what people miss, because that always gets a laugh, I don't know what happened here tonight, but when we did the premiere in Los Angeles, it was like 2,000-seat theatre and an orchestra, and that got a huge laugh, and you miss what I think is the brilliant response from Jeffrey Tambor, and he goes, no, he did not. And it's just, the fact that he thinks it's a man, I thought was genius.
So did you rehearse at all before you shot?
Well, they did. The Politburo, or whatever they're called, the Central Committee.
They
rehearsed a lot.
You were part of that?
I wasn't part of it because I wasn't part of those scenes. I just arrived. I was shooting something else, I can't remember what. And I arrived, basically breezed in and met them all as Zhukov. And, I had a moment to fangirl over all these people who I worshipped enormously before I was metaphorically and literally grabbing them by the balls and abusing them. And then they say, cut, and I go, I'm so sorry. I'm such a huge fan of yours. I'll tell you something. Sorry, can I just say one thing? Though?
Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough. The film has a life that's gone on and on and on more successfully than anyone could have imagined, I think. So we've done lots of Q&As here and in Los Angeles and New York. And people are always asking about how much of it is improvised, because it feels very improvised. But none of it is. Armando and his writers who stand alongside him with a yellow legal pad at all time have they've got the technique down of making things feel spontaneous and anarchic, and there's barely a moment in it that's improvised. And his camera work as well. I'm boring the pants off. He just walked off.
No, I don't want to have to repeat the question.
No,
so yeah,
so he also knows how to, with his kind of slightly anxiety-inducing camera work, he makes you feel like it's spontaneous. But because he's got these two people next to him who specialize in insults, and Armando, every now and again, he'll go, that's not working, we need something about girl guides and bestiality. And they'll go off and they'll come back with 100 insults. That if you do make a suggestion as an actor, it better be fucking good, because these people wrote all of Veep and The Thick of It and stuff. So there's the only moment I remember improvising is that bit where I fake Steve Buscemi out, where he's in the middle of talking to me and I go, look at your fucking face, and he didn't know that was coming. But all the rest of it is written.
Really? Questions for Jason?
Can I go home now? No.
Do you want me to monopolize the conversation? Come on, questions. Yeah. Anyone?
Nothing. Okay.
No, my goodness.
Thank God. That could have been embarrassing.
Actually,
make it a long question.
It's two comments. First, the first comment is that scar on your eye was incredible. That must have been very difficult to do in makeup.
Should I pretend it was? I
That-
don't know. Took
The
like 2
second,
minutes.
the second comment is, I loved your performance in The Patriot.
Oh, thank
You were an evil guy.
Oh, that's a
And
bit unfair. I think I just
well,
just trying to
but
win the
you
war.
were you were excellent
know.
in that. I
Thanks
really
very much.
appreciate that
Those
performance.
children deserve to die. I don't know what to tell you.
There you go. There
And
you
the
go.
collaborators deserve to be burnt in the church. Actually, fun enough, it's one of the last films where Hollywood was prepared, or at least Roland Emmerich, who I think is a great storyteller, was prepared to give the bad guy the power that they need to drive the story. Alan Rickman, God bless him, the late Alan Rickman, was such a genius villain in Die Hard and in Robin Hood that suddenly everybody, all the big Hollywood stars, are very careful to make sure the villains were morons and were overpowered early on. But Roland's a better filmmaker than that. And so I remember they gave me the biggest horse, and they gave me this big slow motion entrance. And Mel was very keen at all times to make me seem powerful, to make me seem a better fighter than him and stronger than him. And when we rehearsed the fight, we rehearsed fight a lot over the 6 months. The stunt guys brought us their notion of the fight first of all, and they went, "It's going to be amazing. So look, you swish at Mel, he blocks you, stabs you in the leg, and then you go for him, and he breaks your arm." And Mel went, "You tell him, Jason." I went, "I've got to win the fight." And they went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, the thing is, he's Mel Gibson. Everybody knows he's going to win the fight, so we have to do everything we can to make it look like I win the fight." And so the film gave me lots of power. There was one moment in the middle of the film that was written, I thought poorly, where Mel comes up to me and goes, "Before this war is over, I'm going to kill you." And it said in the script, Tabington backs off. We see him scared for the first time. And I went over to Roland and I went, "I don't know about that, mate. I mean, if the bad guy's scared halfway through, the film's over. There's nothing to do." And he went, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so simply do something else. Yeah, sure. And I said, "Well, should I tell Mel?" He said, "No, just do something. He's good. He's on his feet and stuff." And I thought, Jesus, it's Mel Gibson. I'm a bit scared of him. So anyway, we get to the moment, and Mel walks up to me, and he goes, "Before this war is over, I'm going to kill you." And I took out my sword, and I turned it around, and I put it in the handle, and I went, "Why wait?" And he was furious. His face went purple, and his eyes were darting around like Mad Max, and he said, "Soon." And he walked off, and Roland said, "Yeah, good, cut." And I went over to Mel and went, "I'm really sorry, mate." He maybe don't. He went, "I fucking loved it." Which I think he did. I'm not quite sure. And also, there was in that very moment, actually, I went over to Roland and I went, "Roland, can we just have a look at the shot? I'm taller than him, and he's got that hat on." And so he's looking up at me, and I look a lot taller than him because of the hat. He said, "Yeah, so maybe you can bend your knees or something, yeah?" So I do the scene, and I'm just trying slightly like that, and then we do a take, and I go over, and he goes, now you pointed out to me, you look enormous to him." And I said, "All right." So then it was on dirt, and I tried to clear a little ditch there to stand there. Like that. And Mel goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." He goes, "I know what you're doing. So you're bigger than me. You're trying to make yourself smaller. You're the bad guy. You should be bigger than me." And that's why he's a good storyteller. I stretched that one out because there's no more questions. Oh, we do have one. Good.
Yes, I'm a bit of an ignoramus as well because I went to an English school, but I did no research before coming here. How closely does the script adhere to actual
Genius question.
history?
I can launch into an anecdote. No. The fact is, I knew, obviously, like you, I knew nothing about any of this, and everything you see in the film, the timeline slightly changed, happened. It's insane, but it happened. So the orchestra thing happened. In fact, the orchestra thing happened. Stalin phoned up and said, "I want a recording," and it wasn't recording. And so, and they made everyone, they locked the doors, and they grabbed other people in, the people who left. The first conductor fainted, knocked himself out. They actually got 3 conductors. The second one was drunk when they got him there. So they got a third one. But, Beria used to think it was funny putting tomatoes in people's pockets and slapping them. Stalin got people back to his house to watch cowboy films all the time and made them drink. Khrushchev used to go home write his jokes. Vasily, Stalin's son, really did make the ice hockey team take off in a storm, and it crashed and they all died. And he was so embarrassed, he brought in ringers who were rubbish to be the ice hockey team. No one could work out where they kept losing. Stalin lay in a puddle of his own urine for days where they're just trying to decide what doctor to get, all that stuff. He woke up and pointed at a woman with a goat. There's not an instant in it that isn't true. It's absolutely amazing. And there was a button under the desk and all those things.
And it was interesting when I saw it for the first time. I was wondering how, maybe the Soviet Union would have turned out had Beria stayed in power. Because I read also somewhere where I think Stalin took him to the Yalta conference and introduced him to FDR as our Himmler. And apparently he was also a sexual predator.
Oh, he was. So this is where I think Armando did something rather magnificent, because the people whose families, I mean, we were at the premiere and the guy comes up because I am Zlotny, or one of those names that all the vowels are missing, and he said I'm your distributor in Eastern Europe, and I said, oh right. He said my mother was taken to the Gulag, my grandparents were killed, and I went, oh, I'm so sorry. Is this? Will it go down okay with them? He said, she will fucking love it, see these people suffer. So I thought he did something amazing, because Beria, for instance, had a game called the petal game. He used to put the flower game. He used to go out and grab a bunch of schoolgirls off the street and make them kneel naked in a circle with their shoes on, and then pick whichever petals he wanted and then rape them and give them back. So it's hinted at. All the violence happens just at the periphery of the screen until it comes to the center, and the person you want to see killed and burned is burned. But he doesn't shy away from the fact that there are summary executions everywhere. On a relatively low budget. I mean, you can't show a whole country and you can't show gulags and stuff. And that other thing is true, by the way, as well. When people are being shot, when people are being killed, they so loved Stalin, they were so taken by the cult of Stalin, that they just assumed that they would die professing their love for him and presuming that somebody else had made this mistake somewhere. And now, of course, his name is being, statues are going up to him. And
that it wasn't really him that put them there,
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned, I mentioned too at the beginning, we were talking, the Harold Pinter and the dumbwaiter. And this question, since you're here, I want to know as an actor how you approach what I'm going to ask you here. But Pinter's known for his pauses in the script.
You don't want to
he
go
makes
there.
them as how do you handle them as an actor?
Oh, you're going to wish you never said that.
No,
you were so going to wish it. So once a week we'd have a Q&A with with the audience after the play, and Harold was alive. Harold is my mate, H. But anyway, so Harold was alive, and we went out to dinner with him a couple of times, and he wanted to come to rehearsals, and the other actor was too scared to have him there. In fact, I'm going to tell you two Harold Pinter stories. One was the first night we opened, because he couldn't come to rehearsals, because my co-actor, who's a gigantic famous comedian in Britain, but hadn't done a lot of acting, was too scared to have him come to rehearsals. The first time he saw it was at the first preview. And we knew famously he was quite crotchety near the end of his life, and didn't suffer fools. And the week before, another play of his had opened somewhere, and he'd gathered all the actors in the dressing room after their press night, and said, "Go home and learn your lines. You're a bunch of fucking amateurs. I've never been so ashamed. It's appalling. If I could take my name off it, I would." So we opened the first night, and it's the first night. You always get some things wrong, and I said some of his lines, and he forgot some stuff, but it went okay. It was the first night, and we're in the dressing room. There's only two of us up there on the third floor, and the theatre had emptied, and Harold had stayed. And we heard over the public address, he went, "I want to see the actors on the stage now. I want the stage manager and the director here." And Antonio, his wife, said, "Be nice, Harold." He went, "Don't fucking tell me to be nice. Just I want them here now." And so Lee came into my dressing room and went, I can't go down. I can't do it, Chase." And I went, "Come on, we've got to talk to him sometime." We went down. We're both men in our 40s, holding hands down the stairs, and we come out, and there's Harold, and there's the stage manager with a bottle of champagne unopened, not knowing what's going to happen, and the producer looking ghostly, and Lee trembling, holding my hand, and the director. And Harold went, "I just want to say, I've never been so proud to see a production of my play. It's one of the finest evenings I've ever spent in the theatre. It was magnificent." And Lee went, "Oh, thanks, Harold, thanks so much. That's really kind of you." Started crying. And I said, because I knew we got a bunch of stuff, I said, "That's really lovely of you, Harold, but we know we got a bunch of stuff wrong, and since you couldn't come to rehearsals, we'd still love any notes or any pointers you got. It'd be great." And he went, "Don't be a cunt. Take a compliment." And I said, but anyway, that pauses. So one night,
the pauses.
we come out, and there's a bunch of Americans who have overpaid to spend a semester at Oxford in the summer with a professor there who is literally out of central casting with a kind of tweed jacket and suede patches and a monocle or something, little glasses. And they all ask really fabulous questions. The dumbwaiter is, basically, if you don't know the play, it's like In Bruges. It's two hitmen waiting in a basement to find out whether they got to kill each other, because they know they messed up the last job, but they don't know what's happening to them. And there's a dumbwaiter, and it starts sending messages down, and they don't know if it's a test. And it's kind of funny and scary. And the American kids all asked really great questions, like, did you think, as the character, did you know you were going to kill the other person? Did you suspect it? What did you think when the thing came down? Just exactly the questions you'd ask. And the professor went, "So can I ask something?" So he said, we know that Pinter's text is really, in many ways, a musical score with pauses and silences and beats. I've always regarded a pause as a quaver and a silence as a crotchet, and a beat really as a kind of a minim in some ways. But how did you approach it? Did you mark those in the text for length, or how do you work it? And Lee just started crying with laughter. He cried a lot. He started crying with laughter. He went, Jace, you take it, you take it. And I said, it's funny you should ask that, but we actually had dinner with Sir Harold last night at the Ivy, and he raised this very subject. And he went, did he really? How very interesting. And what did he say? And I said, I think I'm getting it verbatim. And he said, all those cunts who talk about the musicality in my text are talking out of their arse. All I was doing is trying to stop shitty actors from fucking up my jokes. That's his line. And I felt bad, but he did say that, and the guy just deflated and sat down in his chair. So Pinter crossed those out, because he acted in his own plays a lot. He just crossed all those things out. He said, if you can hold a silence for half an hour, if it's interesting, fine. He said, if you can't hold it if you want to drive through, as long as you get the laugh, I don't care.
But see, that works in the theater more than it would work on film, don't you think?
You know, the magical thing about film is it's only about the moment. You just got to make the moment work, whatever it takes, whatever happens. And that's why rehearsals are good to get to know each other. They're good sometimes to work on the script, but you never want to make a spontaneous, unpredictable shard of humanity occur when the camera isn't rolling, because then you missed it, and then you'll try to reproduce it, so you're just trying to make moments happen on film all the time, and they've got to seem fresh.
I understand you used to do magic.
I don't have any doves up my arse, if that's anything. But yes, I did. Acting, I think, is very similar to magic. It's all about misdirection. It's all about misdirection.
You were an amateur magician.
I did. That's how I got my equity card. I was entertaining at children's parties. Yeah.
Well, why did you stop?
Do you know any magicians? It's not. I studied law as well. Do you know any lawyers? I still do it. I still do it for kids all the time, and they love it until they hit about 5, and then once they get above 5, they just think I'm an idiot who carries around plastic thumbs. You know. But I'm fascinated by magic. Yeah.
Angels in America you were in, and you know that I think the role you played in particular, I would think you would have to be in like a marathon kind of shape to play a part like that. Could you talk about your experience?
So it's 7 hours. It's 3.5 hour plays. And they're hilarious, which we wouldn't know if you watched the HBO version, because it's on telly, and it's a theatre piece. It shouldn't have been filmed, but it's hysterically funny. You've got all these kind of laugh grenades, are going to work, and then people are sobbing. I mean, choking on tears, and it stays with you. It makes you think a lot. So it's the best writing I've ever been anywhere near, but it's 7 hours, and it's a lot. Sometimes you're tired, you've got a headache, or you've got diarrhea or whatever. You've got it. But there's a thing that happens on stage, kind of Dr. Footlights. You get on, and no matter how grotty you're feeling, how tired you are, something energizes you. It's a relationship with the audience, I think, and with the other actors. And also with that thing, you knew it was this magnificent piece of work, and you felt you didn't want to shortchange it. And so you come to life, and then you do the curtain call, and then you're back again. You can't breathe, or you've got a headache. But something happens on stage that just clears everything up. In fact, I was talking to a friend today who went on tour with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, and he got very sick for a while. But he said you would never know it when he went on stage. And it's not because he's faking it, because there's something, there's a strange symbiotic relationship with the audience, and you feed off their energy. Yeah,
Katharine Hepburn used to talk a lot about that. She would say sometimes she had pneumonia, I think, and she said she could never get rid of it because she had to keep playing in a particular production, and when she was on stage, she would forget that she had the pneumonia, but she needed the rest and it would take months. And months.
I've worked with people who are kind of walk up to the thing like that, all arthritic, and they get on stage and they're just bouncing around and alive, and then it takes over again.
Yeah. Any questions for Jason?
Anybody?
Is
Hello. Hi.
Yeah. Let's get you on the mic here so everybody can hear you. Here, I get you.
I'm trying to remember when did you? I'm trying to remember how I was going to word this question now.
It's not going out live. It's all right.
Good. Did you start noticing history's kind of starting to repeat itself again?
Oh shit! I mean, the weird thing about this is that people assume, since it's come out and since we're in publicity, that it was somehow Armando's response to Trump and the Trump administration, because he's famously a political satirist, although I've known his comedy for 30 years. He's at the top of the tree in the comedy world in England for a long time for doing just silly stuff. But because of Veep, because he wrote and directed Veep, people assume it's all political. Actually, we shot it in June 2016 before Trump was even a candidate. And I had a day off at one point, and I went to this commemoration of the Battle of the Somme, one of the great First World War battles in France. And the Brexit vote had just happened, and David Cameron had resigned the day before. And so I went there to this thing. It was incredibly moving, many thousands of graves, and there were the heads of every country in Europe and the heads of all the armies stuff. Poor David Cameron sitting there must have been so embarrassed. So he came over to talk to me because he probably had nothing to talk to the other people about. And he said, "What are you doing at the moment?" I didn't ask him because obviously he was packing or something, And I saw I was doing a film about the power vacuum after Stalin died and how everyone was stabbing each other in the back. He went, "Jesus, it sounds like Downing Street." Which is where the British cabinet were all just kind of stabbing each other in the back and front. It was like Julius Caesar. But then one screening, somebody came out of the audience and said, "Thank you so much for making a film about Zimbabwe," because it's Mugabe's Zimbabwe after Mugabe went. So it applies anywhere. The thing that reminded me most of the current catastrophe is the cabinet sitting around when they voted unanimously and stuff. Was that press conference early on after Trump was elected, and the camera had to pan past all these men, and they all had to profess their love and admiration for, and thank God they were born under the light of this extraordinary God. And that cult of personality is so strong, and you watch them all just be so compromised morally that there was no going back. And that's true, I think, of all the characters in this. They're so compromised morally. But it was, it's a good story because you recognize the truth of all politicians. It applies, of course it applies in monstrous ways to what's going on at the moment, in some ways at least. But it applies to pretty much every situation where politicians are seeking power and fearing for their own status, I think.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what are people looking for in a leader? I think it was in...
That's a big question.
Well, in Maximilian Schell's documentary about Marlene Dietrich, he was talking to her and he said, what happened with Hitler because she was there, and she said, well, the German people want a father figure,
right?
And it got to be too much for me, so I left. But it's I don't know.
Also, when someone is that strong, when somebody comes in and just plows before, if you don't take your moment, if people don't stand up immediately and quickly, then that develops. There's this kind of power back. Everyone is so compromised in every way, ethically and morally, that it's too late to go back. And those parallels I see around us all the time at the moment.
We have time for a couple more. Oh, good. We got some.
Hurrah! They're flowing now. Now we're flowing. Now we're cooking.
Well, we're going to get this gentleman, then we'll get that later.
Thanks. Big fan. I think I'm probably one of the only people who was a big fan from Armageddon. The wife opening your ketchup bottles line has resonated for the better part of 20 years. So I just had more of a... So in the movie when Zhukov just immediately attacks Vasily, I was wondering if that was in response to a specific incident or just general dislike or just staying in character.
No, it's just, in fact, I'm not even sure that particular thing happened because I'm so aware of the other things that I know based on reality. Mm-hmm. He's the enforcer around, and Rupert's a bit good looking, so I think he deserved a kick in the balls. That's, He did, incidentally, that one of my favorite bits when he spits, and they were going to do it digitally, and he's like, no, I can do it. And so he sent Armando a video of himself in the trailer spitting many times, hitting himself in the face, and said, please don't show this to anyone. So we've all seen it, and hopefully it'll end up on YouTube. It was rather brilliant. I thought, to be honest, the hardest thing about making this film was deciding who to sit next to at lunch. I'm such a huge fan of everybody there, and it was such a fabulous atmosphere. Paul Whitehouse, who you won't know, who's a giant TV comedian in England, had a guitar, and he just would bust out in very cheesy songs in between takes, and we'd all join in. It was like some camp counselor's trip somewhere, and it was hard sometimes to recreate the tension when they said action because we had such a good time with each other. But Paul Harris is the guy who at the end goes, "Oh, it's been a busy old week, isn't it?"
I had a quick question.
I'm only taking questions from people with beards from now on. These two, okay. In San Francisco, everyone's got a beard.
It's true. So you talked about how all the lines were written, but there's so much physicality in all the scenes, especially with your character, like the entrance, which is spectacular. how much of that was sort of written, and how much did you have to like play with the physicality and bring just
Well, the script's written, but
moments?
the blocking, the choreography is all stuff you come up with on the day. And I think Armando, that whole slow motion stuff was not planned. It's just Armando saw me take my coat off on the medals and went, "Oh, well, let's shoot that in slow mo, shall we?" And it becomes this great entrance. But it wasn't planned. I know that they rehearsed. Because I wasn't at rehearsal. I know they rehearsed carrying Stalin to the bed to try and get the funniest blocking of it. And I also know. So we shot this in London. Shot this in dusty churches and car parks and stuff. It's all digital. We didn't go to Russia. He went to Russia for a day and snatched bits of footage before men in trench coats asked him to stop. I think, but part of the digital effects budget, went on. They were shooting the scene. It was quite a big scene for this low budget film. Where we had crowds going past the coffin, and that bit where they do and go past each other like that. And when Steve went in front of Jeffrey, or someone went in front of Jeffrey, and Jeffrey Tambor went, "What the fuck are you doing?" Steve Buscemi just burst out laughing. So they used the digital money to turn his smile into a frown and turn his face down. So those bits were rehearsed, but the rest of it is stuff you come up with. In fact, having said that none of it is improvised, the one scene that Armando deliberately wanted to create chaos in, he said it was right at the end where we go into the barn and there's that kind of kangaroo court. And he said, and it was quite a long scene. It was a trial scene. There were declarations. There were people reading all these accusations out and stuff. And Armando went, right, there's 3 cameras in that room, so go in and I want the scene to last 2 minutes. And the people going, but I've got a 2-page speech. What are you talking about? But he sent us in there, and everyone just shouted over each other. We didn't know where the cameras were, unlike the rest of the time when it's very carefully choreographed. And it was just chaos and anarchy. And then I grabbed him up to take Simon out. And I, of course, wanted to be the person to shoot him because, what is acting after all, apart from children playing the playground? I thought, let me be the guy to kill him. And I got him up, and he was dead. And I didn't know that was going to happen either. I went, oh, well, that's got it done. And so that was the only time there was deliberately chaos. The rest of it was very carefully scripted, and the choreography was worked out on the day. Like that's the best way. I mean, I've done films before where they don't call you out of your trailer until you come down and the director has blocked the scene, like you're animated, like your marionettes or something, and it's never as organic.
We have time for one more question, and so the pressure's on for this.
Better be really fucking good. Really live in people's memory for years.
Well then.
Oh, hi.
I'm going to do 2 for the price of 1. Your most challenging moment on set, what was it? And your favorite moment on set?
Oh my God. I have no answers for either. What a terrible shame. There was nothing challenging about it. I mean, the most challenging moment was making a suggestion because, Armando's got these 2 guys and they do nothing but feed insults to him. So if you go over and go, I've got a line, and they look up at you. This is what we do and all we get to do occasionally. And you think, so anytime I make a suggestion, so suggesting that I fake Steve out with that thing and then kiss him on the lips and stuff was, and grabbing him by the balls, because I said, are you wearing a cup or something? He went, no. And I went, okay, I think I probably am still anyway going to grab your balls and stuff. And he's like, okay. So anyway, and the most it was most enjoyable was that thing. The most enjoyable was every single day. I couldn't believe I was getting to sit with Michael Palin, and he would patiently talk me through every episode of Monty Python I'd seen growing up, all the films. Jeffrey Tambor taught me through all of Larry Sanders, and everybody else. I mean, Simon Russell Beale, who you won't know, many of you, who plays Beria, is probably Britain's most celebrated classical stage actor. And who doesn't really do film. And I've seen every one of his performances, and it was just one of those lovely atmospheres where everybody's being nice to each other. And so I would just go up and fangirl over people, and it was I was just upset when it was over, that's all.
Okay, Death of Stalin. If you liked the film, please feel free to go on social media and tell people. If you didn't like the film, don't go on social media and say anything. But really, if you liked it, spread the word. We were talking to the manager, Steve, out front, and he said the film is like their best movie, has been performing the best for like the last month when it opened. So thanks to San Francisco.
Don't just tell your
audiences.
friends, tell strangers. You probably don't know that many people. But tell total strangers that you liked it.
Jason Isaacs, give it up
Thanks,
for him,
guys.
please.
Thank you.